What's up, friends and listeners? You're about to hear a new episode of Disrupting with Ashley Holt. That would make me Ashley Holt. Thank you for stopping by. Disrupting is about people who are quite literally allergic to the status quo in our world. They have to make a shift or a change when they see something that needs changing. So those are the conversations I'm having with my favorite social media follows, experts, maybe a celebrity or two could pop up. We're going to manifest that together. And just some of my friends that I know we're doing amazing work for the world around us. I'm so excited for you to hear these conversations. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your favorite platform so you get notifications about new episodes, and leave comments for me. I love your feedback. Let me know what questions you want to ask, who you want me to reach out to for an interview so that we can get started on disrupting the things in this world that we need to change together. Morolake Akinosun, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you. Can I do a little bio on you really fast for the girls? Is that okay?
Only if you include our high school history together.
I actually wasn't. I didn't know how you felt about it, but fine, we can do that too.
If you include that, then you can say whatever else you want.
Fine.
Yeah.
Since that's the most important to you, Morolake and I went to high school together. That is how I know her. So I basically get to slide into her DMs whenever I feel like it. I'm really appreciative of that. But Morolake, I feel most importantly, is one, a new aunt. Shout out to what's your
Yes.
what's his name?
Yes. Tani.
Wow. I can't believe that. Anyway,
I also love you including that because I'm obsessed with him.
I figured you were. I would
He's
be.
actually my child too. He's my son. He's not my nephew.
I think he's actually your child and your
Yeah.
sister's.
I didn't carry him, but he's my child. He's my son.
That's so fantastic. And then third on the list, just so happened to be a gold medalist in the track and field, Olympic gold medalist at that, world champion, runs track a little bit on the side. But you also are an Adidas running pro, and you have the Akinosun Invitational that you are like CEO, COO, you help other people run track and get noticed, which I love that for you too. So that is your bio. I'm glad that you took it into your own hands though and made sure we prioritized it properly.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk to you because you also, in addition to being an Olympian, wanted to do something different with Emmanuel Acho, who is a sports analyst and also a former NFL player. You two are friends as well. And so he launched Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man back in 2020, which feels like was yesterday, but it definitely was not. And you were a producer on that. So I want to dig into that with you because y'all really, you want to talk about disruptors, really wanted to be disruptors at a time when people had tough questions, didn't know who to ask. And so I really want to talk to you about that process because it impacted a lot of people, including Oprah. So how do you not have that conversation? So my first question to you, I'm asking everybody this. What made you and Emmanuel want to shake the table? What made you say yes to this idea? Why did y'all shake the table?
What made us want to shake the table?
Mhm.
All right. First, I have to give most of the credit to Emmanuel here
Mhm.
because it was his idea. He came up with it, and I don't remember where I was anymore, but I remember the phone call I received from him telling me about this idea that he wanted to have. Um, what made us want to shake the table? It was realizing and understanding that a lot of our white friends genuinely had tons of questions and did not understand. People that we are close with. That when I heard the questions they had, I was like, you actually don't know this, and you've been friends with me for how long, and you've never asked. And I'm like, if they don't know this, I can't imagine what other people who don't have Black friends that they're close with don't know.
Right. Absolutely. And so, how do you even start to create that space, right? Because I feel like a lot of us had those moments in 2020, like, oh my goodness, the people around me don't know what's happening and why it's happening. So, when you two were setting up, like, what your priorities were, what that would look like, how did you create a safe space? Like, I know millennials are often mocked for like safe spaces, but you actually made one. How did you do that?
Mhm. I think the first thing, the most important thing was separating anger away from it because a lot of it in conversations did come from a place of anger. And I will speak for myself, but I think a lot of Black people felt the same way in 2020, where we were just mad. We were just mad at the existence of white people. And it was like, this just straight up, it was like, I know that you didn't kill George Floyd, but you are white. And right now I am angry with you, even
Yeah.
though you are a friend. And that's like the first thing, was realizing like I am angry, but like let's have a conversation to resolve this outside of my anger. Because if you can't do that in any relationship, if you can't remove your anger, come to the table and have like an honest conversation, you can't solve anything. And
Mhm.
so I think the most important thing for us was like removing feelings out of it.
Right. Was that difficult for y'all? Because I feel like a lot of this, it's not like we're talking about your profession. It's not like we're
Mhm.
talking about, which we can talk about later, but it's not like we're talking about the whole year gold medal when Allyson Felix had to know what she was doing to get y'all. Like, we're not talking about that. This is not something
Mhm.
that's external. We're talking about who y'all are as human beings. So, how do you take your emotions out of that? Is it even possible? Do y'all talk about it later? Like, you go to Sonic and you like get everything out later?
Oh, absolutely. There was always a recap of like afterwards of like, can you believe what she said? But like, dang, I can't believe she didn't know. Yes, of
Right.
course we talked about it afterwards. But in the moment, I think that it was, I don't know, God, grace, knowing that these people are friends, that they're good hearted, that it's not ill intent, and just like being able to sit in that space and be like, we are choosing to be here. But yes, of course it was hard. How we did it, I don't know. God, that's my answer.
Amen. And what question were there any questions that shocked you the most? Don't name who asked it, but like were there questions where you were because I feel like there are some where you're
There,
like, okay,
there was two. There was two.
please.
The first one was one of our friends saying, "Is it even okay for me to say black? Should I say black? Should I say African American?" There was that was one, which also made it to, it might be chapter one, I cannot remember. It might be chapter one of Uncomfortable Conversations with the Black Man, the book. Is it black or African American, like the name game? Because
Mhm.
we were shocked that they did not know the answer to that question. And then the second one was talking about black spaces, and the conversation of black church came up. And they said, I thought that was the all thing, that like we couldn't come to black church. And I was like, oh, those are the two that I was just like, I see that we have a lot to unpack here. Like we have a lot to like, you know, sift through here. Those are the two questions.
Which like I feel like the black church one is fair. Like, oh, I thought y'all needed your own time on your own. Like, I guess I can get that one. But wow, that's so interesting. And so I feel like there are people who are going to watch this who aren't going to know the question to the first one, black versus African American. What did you find?
That everyone has a different preference,
Mhm.
and that some people genuinely prefer the term black and some people prefer African American.
Sure.
And I'm like, I don't really like being called African American because I am not. I am Nigerian, but I am black. And so if you're going to call me something, call me Nigerian American, which is correct, or call me black, but I don't like African American. And I feel like African American is also incorrect because there are people who are um, Caribbean American who are
Right.
not actually from an African country, or, you know, and so they are black, but they are not African American.
Right.
So I think black is more universally correct.
And I would also hope that double check why you're asking that because perhaps you could just call them by their name. Like you might want to reevaluate.
It was literally talking about like what is the correct term of race to call. And the person who asked the question almost felt like black was a derogatory term to say.
Like it's
And I
too
was just,
casual.
yeah. I'm like, no, not at all.
Variant. And I asked you what your favorite episode was, and you gave me a few, but you actually did
Mhm,
say that the first episode was one of your favorites, and I was just
mhm.
rewatching it. Um, what did y'all get right in that episode, and what did you do in that episode, and then say, okay, we want to tweak these things moving forward?
So I think that there's two important things to establish. Episode one and how it happened and how it appeared on the screen is not at all how it was supposed to happen.
Okay.
And prior to episode one, there was another girl who was supposed to be in the conversation with Emmanuel. And we had spent the 48 hours prior to recording it prepping what questions were going to be asked, what she was going to ask, what, you know, long phone conversations, long calls. Like we had spent time, in depth time prepping for this episode that was going to be recorded on that. I believe it was a Sunday morning. She lived in Dallas. She drove from Dallas to Austin, and we spent time prepping this episode. That morning that we were supposed to record, she backed out. She was like, tears, bawling. No exaggeration. This was a white woman bawling. I can't do this. The people don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from you. Like it was like I used to have a lot of angry feelings about it because I was like, this is the problem. This is like another white person saying
Right.
I have to be in this battle and choosing to step out when it's
Right.
like you can't not be in this battle. Like this is life for us. And so she ends up choosing not to be in the episode, which was very frustrating in the moment. But hindsight is 2020, and we realized that that was the way it was supposed to be. That
Mhm.
episode one was supposed to be just Emmanuel, and it was completely unrehearsed. It was completely unscripted, and I remember, being like, "You go ahead to the studio. I'll meet you there. We'll figure out what we're gonna do." And I sat there in the director's chair behind the camera, just looking to be like, all right, let's see like how we're gonna work this out, like what we're gonna do. And we hit record and Manuel starts speaking. I kid you not, I believe the first episode is 9 minutes and 22 seconds or 9 minutes, 24 seconds. We never cut. It was one take,
Wow.
one time through. And I remember after he asked and answered the first question, I made like a note of like, okay, that's a great place to cut in an edit, like trying to figure out like how
Right.
we're gonna put it together. And he never cut. Um, so my favorite thing about episode one is just how organic it was and how it happened
Right.
in a way that like that's how it was supposed to happen. But we just didn't know that in the 3 days that we spent
Right. And what's
planning it.
interesting is so like you said, he's in the episode by himself, which I completely forgot because a lot of the ones that, made media coverage, it was him interviewing Matthew McConaughey, police
Hmm.
officers. So I
Hmm.
forgot that it was just him in the first one. And he is explaining how this came about, which is, speaking to white people in his life who had questions. And then he's like answering those
Hmm.
questions. And I wondered in watching it if that was on purpose because I wonder, like, white people are afraid to ask those questions. Like, that's the point, right? And so I
Yep.
wonder if taking out the other party kind of made it a safe space, not just for people to ask, but for people to watch it too, because they didn't have to feel the guilt. So it's interesting to hear that that was not on purpose.
It was not on purpose at all whatsoever.
And how did you feel when it was over?
It took me a couple of days to, you know, get over it because I was really upset with like, how could we work so hard to put
Right.
something together just for you to back out at literally the last second? But afterwards, I was like, oh, it's better this way. It was better without you. And like, we actually never needed you to be in this. We just needed, like, we didn't need you for it.
Right.
Um, so it was kind of like validating in a way to be like, we could have done this on our own the entire time, which then
Mhm.
we proceeded to do.
Yeah. And obviously, you can't predict if like Oprah's going to see something or not. But when you watched the first episode back, did you think this is going to be a big deal? Or did you think, you know what? No matter what, we did what we came here to do?
The second one, no matter what, we did what we came here to do. Nothing in either of us thought it was going to blow up the way that it did. Nothing. It was like accidental greatness, which I think is the best kind of greatness. Is like we weren't trying to write books, win an Emmy, create, I think it's like 14 episodes now. None of that was a forethought back in June of 2020 when the first episode was recorded. It was just, how can we help people right now? That was what the goal was.
Right. And this expanded past just speaking about racial issues, because you said another one of your favorite episodes was about Roe v. Wade. And I wonder what conversations the two of you had about, obviously Emmanuel is a man,
Mhm.
having these conversations. How do you approach that? Do you two sit there and say, okay, like, what kind of questions do we ask? How do we word it? Because the first episode was so natural.
Mhm. Um, for every episode that happened after the first episode, we would curate all of the questions together and sit and figure out what topics need to be covered, what questions need to be asked, and there's never exactly a script that is followed, but there are for sure topics that always need to be addressed. And so with Roe v. Wade, that was an episode where I truly got to take the true, like, I don't want to say the true lead,
Mhm.
but the questions that I had to ask and like my perception was more valued because I am a woman and I'm
Mhm.
like, I this was very important to a lot of women. And it was one of It's an episode where Emmanuel doesn't speak that much. If
Mhm,
you really go back and like watch, he asks questions, he listens, he gives commentary, but he really just opened up the floor for women to speak and share their stories. And I think that is so important because it's like he has this large, great platform, and allowing an issue as great as Roe v. Wade to be spoken about and through is just amazing.
mhm. What is one part of the process that you think people wouldn't expect? Because I feel like producer is such a broad term. Like you literally are responsible for making everything happen. Like it's an all-encompassing term.
I think the part is the editing.
Mm,
How much time goes into curating the episode. For example, I believe that the Roe v. Wade raw footage was like 2 hours of
I believe
conversation.
you.
And it's taking 2 hours of conversation and being like, we need to curate this down to the best 20 to 30 minutes
Yeah.
possible. And sitting there and being like, are we going to move this question up? Are we going to move this question back? Oh my gosh, I cannot believe we have to cut this question, cut this response short. That I think is the hardest part to sift through is sitting there and knowing that like, oh, we've been talking for 2 hours, but this episode's not going to be more than 30 minutes. So
And people get so emotionally attached to it, and you're like, I told you before, and I'm going to tell you after. All of this is not going to make it. People are not going
yeah,
to 2 hours.
that's the hardest part. Or the hardest part sometimes is finding the right people to be on the show. We
Right.
have moved into a, how do I want to call it? A way of, when uncomfortable conversations first started back in 2020, we were kind of in a rhythm. And after the first episode released, we kind of released an episode every other week or every 3 weeks. And it was releasing pretty regularly. And then we stepped back from it and we decided that anytime that there is a moment that something needs to be spoken on, there is a topic that a conversation needs to be had, we will step into that space.
Mhm.
But unless there is a topic that needs to be spoken on, we will just be quiet, and you don't always have to speak. I think there's power in silence and power in speaking when there is something to say. And so that's where we're at now. Is that when there is something to say, when there is a conversation to be had, we will step into that uncomfortable space and have the conversation. And until then, we'll just be chilling.
Have you ever disagreed on a topic that needed to be discussed versus not discussed?
Disagreed. Yes,
That you can share?
yes. I just don't know if we want to go into it um on this
Get
podcast.
in trouble.
Um, I wouldn't say that we disagreed on the topic, but rather disagreed as to whether or not we should step into that space.
Right.
Yeah, I will say that.
But we'll leave what the topic was
We can
out.
go on.
Got it. What do you think has surprised Emmanuel about hosting this? Because there, I mean, feedback is going to be positive and negative because the
Mhm.
internet, everybody has a keyboard. Do you think that he was ready for the kind of response he got? Because you
No,
go into this with great intentions, and sometimes people who look like you are like, I don't care for this. So,
I
like,
will honestly say that I think the majority of Black people have a huge problem with uncomfortable conversations.
interesting.
Mhm. I would say the majority of criticism that he receives, and oftentimes I feel bad because he is the face of it. He is the one that's on the screen putting himself out there, and I'm behind the camera. I'm
Right.
always there, at every shoot, throughout every single edit, monitoring comments. Well, it's not my face and my name on the
Yeah.
screen, so I don't really get negative comments directed towards me,
Mhm.
but I read them and I feel them, but they're not, I'm not the one tagging them. They're not saying my name in them, so it
Mhm.
hurts less. But I would say that the majority of Black people do have a problem with uncomfortable conversations and don't like the way that he's moved about it. Do I think he was ready for that? No.
Who
Do I
is?
think will stop him from ever doing it? Also, no.
Yeah. What do you think drives the comments? Because the TV side of me wants to say, were they the audience? Like he was
Nope, they're
right.
not. And I think that's part of the problem for a lot of Black people is that they don't like that he is catering to white people and being like, oh, you're too nice to them and you're trying to make white
Mm,
people feel comfortable and feel, and like, if they feel uncomfortable, if they feel like this is not a safe space, will they ever learn? Will they ever get the answers to their questions? And no, they won't at all.
Right.
So I think another driving point for most of the negative comments is a lack of understanding, a
Mhm.
lack of understanding of his intention behind it, a lack of understanding of, his heart behind it.
And you said that it hurt. And obviously asking you personally, why did those comments hurt?
They strike a place that makes it seem like it's ingenuine, that it seems like the comment that is often there is that he's dancing for the man, that it's all for money.
Mm,
And every single episode, that's not true. The first 4 for sure, and then the last 3 or 4 was 100% completely funded by Emmanuel, as in he took a loss to make them.
right.
So it was not like, "Oh, I'm doing this to make money," because there was no money to be made. There was, what the dollars and cents that you get from YouTube for uploading a video, but what about the cost of the production team that's been hired, the studio that's been rented, like everything that goes into it was an upfront cost for him. So that one's the one that's just like, if this was a money play, he's bad at making money.
And it's kind of like that quote, and I'm going to butcher it, about like the man in the arena. Like you can't critique him if you're not in the arena, also. Like at least
Yeah,
he's trying and he's
yeah,
doing something about it. Yeah.
yeah.
Was there any feedback that you thought was valid that you took into account when you were creating more episodes?
That we took into account now because we stopped reading negative comments. I had to stop reading the YouTube
You have
comments.
to.
Emmanuel is better at handling them than me. I would get angry and I'd be wanting to get on and like, be a keyboard warrior and start like defending and
The
he'd be like,
Twitter
"No,
fingers. Yeah.
stop." So I stopped reading them.
Yeah.
I had to.
And have you taken what you've learned in this into actual real life? Like y'all had an episode with police officers and they were having conversations about, black people, black men getting pulled over, what the interactions are like. I also wonder if that hits different for you because now you have a nephew slash son. Like, do these conversations impact your life now? Are you kind of, because you're putting so much time and passion into them?
They've always impacted my life and I've always felt passionately about them because, I also have a brother-in-law, a dad, cousins
Yep.
that all fit into this range of black men. And so it's like I feel this on a level of like, I don't know what's gonna happen if I'm like out on the street and in this world and life in general. But they've always impacted my life. But more than anything, I think what I've learned from filming these conversations has helped me. They've helped me go into speaking to people of every race with just a little bit more grace. And like I think that the majority of people on this earth are good people.
Mhm.
They're good intended people, and a lot of people are just like ill informed and ignorant, not in a negative way of ignorant, but really just uneducated and not by any fault of their own, by just the circumstances that they've grown up in. Um, I remember, and you'll like this story. I remember back when I still lived in Austin, I showed up to one of my white friends' house, family, amazing family, love them to death, and my hair was drastically different. And the man was very confused. He was like, "I saw you yesterday, and your hair was right here." And like he's like, I don't know if this is rude or whatnot, but like, how does this work? Because he had never been close enough friends with a black woman to ask the question of
Mhm.
how does weave work? Like, I don't understand. Explain it to me. And so I was like, you know what? Hold on. I happen to live, no exaggeration, like down the street from them. I'll be right back. So I walked home,
No, you
literally
didn't.
hair. Yes, I did.
No, you didn't.
Literally hair and brought it back to be like,
Mm.
this is the wet. This is the hair. I'm like, explain it to him. And he was like so grateful for me to like explain that. And I'm like, I'm so serious. But that is like the level that people truly don't know. They're like, I'm
Yeah.
poor. And I'm like, he's not, I know him. I know his family. He's a good man. He just has no idea how we work.
And I always tell people, like, even when I'm interviewing people, I'm like, we Black people don't owe anybody anything, right? Like, I don't have to explain anything to you. But I think what's interesting and what's necessary to understand is that if you want to, you totally can. And people
Yeah.
just have to be respectful in how they ask, because intention doesn't really, I mean, you could have good intentions and the questions still come out wrong, but you got to know who you can talk to and just be respectful. And if someone says, I'm not talking to you about my hair, that's their right. Versus you who went home and grabbed a unit. That is hilarious to me. I actually can picture it, and you are the perfect person to do that
But
because I know you would do it.
life not knowing. Or if I would have like reacted negatively to him, he would never ask another Black woman about her hair ever. And he would die without knowing. Seriously.
And you couldn't live with yourself if that's the case.
Yes.
I know for a fact that you are telling the truth because I know you would do that.
Yes.
Oh my
So
goodness. That
and
is
now like I told one person and he can tell all his friends.
that's
I help.
true. That's a whole zip code that's now educated.
Here we go.
Now they know.
Yep.
That is fantastic. Okay, so I can't have you here and not talk about the Olympics. You can tell me what you can't talk about, but are we gonna see you in the Olympics?
That is the goal, the hope, the prayer, the dream. So I'm gonna
Got
say
it.
yes.
Prayer warriors out there. Okay. Okay. Wait. This is exciting. I didn't think you would give me an answer that quickly. So, can you tell people what the process is like? Because obviously, we know that there are competitions that happen
Mhm,
that are not the Olympics, but like,
mhm.
when do you start prelims? When do you start figuring out when that's going to happen? How are you
It
preparing?
all happens at the Olympic trials, which is June 21st to 30th this year. So in like 4.5 months now
Yeah.
in Eugene, Oregon, Tracktown, USA at the University of Oregon. That's the Olympic trials. It is so like cut and dry simple to make the US Olympic team, but it's not easy. It's simple but not easy. You have to qualify to run at the Olympic trials. You must run a qualifying time. I wish I remembered what the qualifying time is, but I don't. I'd be
Be
making it up.
impressed. Yeah.
I'd be making it up. You have to run a qualifying time prior to the Olympic trials. There is a qualifying window. And so any of the races that you run between, I believe the qualifying window started sometime last year through like literally 2 weeks before Olympic trials, you've qualified. You register to run through USA Track and Field, be a member, blah, blah, blah. Simple. You show up at the meet. There's 3 rounds, a prelim, a semifinal, a final. You make that final, top three, you're running in the Olympics. Top six, you're probably going to be on the relay. That's
And
it. That's why I
so,
said it's not easy.
oh, right. Like, you can
Yeah.
explain it to us, but that doesn't mean any of us could go do it. That's a fact. No, it's not happening.
I mean, you can start training, become a USA Track and Field member. It's real easy. You go to the website, sign up. That's it. You're a member, pay the fee. And then,
Please do not sell people dreams on this podcast. Please do not do that.
can do it. Will you run a qualifying time? I am not. I do not.
Y'all, this is the lady who brought her unit to the man's house. Do not do what she is telling. She will film you doing this. Please don't do this. Okay, so what goals do you have from the last time? And how did you prepare differently or the same from the last time?
Okay, I'm like hit us with something that's like I don't really believe in goals.
Oh, wow.
I don't believe in goals. I don't like the word goal. I feel like the word goal is very limiting, and having set goals is very limiting. It does one of two things for you. It either one limits you, or two, it hurts your self-esteem, self-efficacy, and what you actually like believe you can achieve and do.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's the thing. I instead have objectives that I set for myself that cannot be limited. And I think of mine as my like objective in track and field, at least
Hmm.
different ones in life, is to be considered one of the greatest female sprinters to ever run. And that can be argued. No one can actually say that, oh, like it is this person or it is this person. It's just to
Right,
be in the conversation of when they're talking about that, just have my name be mentioned. And to
right.
do this, you have to win races, run fast times, get medals. Like it's the things that you can do to be put in that category is limitless. And yeah, what am I doing differently this year? I
You
don't know.
moved.
I did move. Yes, I did move from the last Olympic trials and Olympic to now. I have a new coach. I live in a new city. I have new training partners. Everything is different for me. So I guess I'm doing everything differently, but I'm doing everything the same. I approach every practice, every training session with I'm going to put forth the best effort that I can give today. With every rep, I think of it as like you just got this rep, this 150, this 200, this 300. Focus on this one.
Mhm. Yeah. And I have to ask you because your very first gold medal came in very complicated fashion. And people can go watch the video. I've watched it 100 times of like whatever documentary when they explain what happened. And basically, Allyson Felix saved the day because she knew the
She
intricate rules.
did. She sure did.
So basically, and I'm going to butcher this because it was so long ago. Basically, y'all were running the relay 4x1, four by
Yeah,
one,
4x1.
4x1. And someone, it appeared, had just dropped the baton, which obviously means everything's over for you. But they were like,
Yes.
no, no, no. Somebody
Yes.
was in our lane, all these
Yes.
things. But Allyson Felix knew that y'all, because the time doesn't matter anymore, everybody's done.
Mhm.
She knew that somebody had to pick up the baton and that y'all had to finish the race in order to contest what was going on. Am I right so far?
Yes, you were right.
Fantastic. So then y'all got another shot, but you had to run it by yourselves without
Mhm.
really knowing what the time was going to be. Anyway, people can go watch it. It's so interesting because y'all ended up obviously getting the gold medal in the end.
Mhm.
What did that teach you about leadership, about how you need to know the rules? Like, what did that teach you just in like a team format?
So first of all, a couple of years ago, one of my teammates who ran with me, Tiana Bartoletta, she's now Tiana Madison, wrote a memoir. And she wrote the story of what happened in Rio with that relay. And I went back and I read it and I realized that like I didn't remember some of it. And I was like, did this really happen? And she was talking about how the four of us like stood outside together waiting. And I'm like reading it and I'm just like, she's lying. I just can't remember.
Like, this is a good story. Wow.
She's like, I'm like find like the image of it, picture of it, like in my memory, and I'm just like, what happened that like I blocked out everything negative that happened, but I remember the big moments only. Um, I
Trauma.
think that yeah, trauma. I think that what I truly learned in that moment, especially from Allison, and then I got the opportunity to train with Allison in her last year running track and field, which was, amazing as well, is that there is a sense of like truly never giving up. I
Mm,
remember standing on that track. I was running the anchor leg, realizing that like English, the third leg, was not coming around. And I was about to walk off the track and be like, oh, well, I guess that's it. And I was going
mhm,
to just like walk off the track. And then I saw English and I was just like, oh, we're still doing this. Like, we're gonna run. So I like stood in my spot and received the baton from her and like ran across the line, even though I was like, I don't really know what's going on here, but I'm gonna just trust that, like, I'm
somebody
gonna
does.
finish. Yes. At that point in time, I had no idea what had occurred. I could not see what had occurred. And so it taught me to one, don't give up, keep going, even when it feels like you failed, like it's over, you don't know what is ahead of you. So, like, keep going. And two, sometimes you just gotta trust in people and trust in what you can't see. Because
Mm.
I finished that race, even though I had zero clue what had happened between the second and third exchange, that someone had hit Allison, that the baton had fallen, that they had like passed the baton in the zone. I did not know any of that in the moment. All I knew was that the baton was coming and I still needed to run.
Hmm. And it's a good lesson too, because a lot of people who want to be leaders or who are leaders or who are outspoken would have been like, what do you mean? What, like, wanted answers? And sometimes you got to know when to trust and you got to know when it's time to lead. And in that
Yep.
moment, they just needed you to be a team member. Even though you're
Yep.
capable of leading, they didn't need that in that moment. They needed you to
Yep.
finish the race.
They need me to
I love
finish.
that. Yeah. So, and I'm going to end it here because I'm having too much fun. So I don't want you to think we're going to be here all night. But one thing I admire about you and about Emmanuel is that y'all two could have been successful, had huge platforms without doing uncomfortable conversations. You could have been an Olympian, your gold medal wouldn't have gone anywhere. Why do it still? Like, why did you feel the need to step out? Because in The Last Dance, Michael Jordan talks about, I'm not political. Not that this is political, but he's like, I'm sticking
Hmm.
to sports.
Hmm.
You have people talk about, just, stick to dribbling, right? Why branch out? Why take the chance? And why should other people take the chance if they feel it in their heart?
Because I feel like it's what's the word that I would use? I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice, you, the figurative you of anyone, to believe that you must stay in one lane only, to believe that you only have one gift, to believe that you only have one calling, to believe that there's only one way that you can make an impact. You're doing yourself a disservice. And so, if there is another alley, another avenue that you can use to help people to make change, to make a difference, you absolutely should. And so, I never want to just be just a gold medalist because that's not enough for me. And even with the Akinosun Elite Invitational, like I didn't have to do that. But it
Right.
was an aspect of like I want to continue to make change in every single way possible. And so if I find another way, I'm gonna do that one too.
Is there any
Absolutely.
other gem you want to leave people with? I feel like you, child, you got us dumping goals. You got, I mean, my God.
Do I have any
Advice
other
for people who feel they're disruptors, but they don't know how to start.
do it scared? That's
Whew,
not original, but like do it
it's
scared.
good every time though.
I know. That's the one thing that I feel people get so stuck in like, their fear, their anxiety. And I'm just like, look, take a minute, acknowledge it, and be like, I am afraid, but I'm gonna do this anyway.
Thank you, ma'am. This was awesome. I loved it. Appreciate you.
We can do this again sometime.
Oh, I'll find an excuse. Don't you worry about it.
Okay, good.